Through the first 3 generations of Xbox, Forza Motorsport cemented itself as a racing game institution with its biennial releases. But it's been a much longer wait than that for the 8th game in the series, with Turn 10 Studios reinventing the wheel of what Forza is as a racing game. The result is something that fits much better with the current pantheon of simcade racers, with much more serious feeling multiplayer, but has also lost some of its US first racing personality in the process. Let's start off by digging into some of the technical details and what you're seeing in the background, because one of the first jobs for any Forza game is to be a technical showcase for Xbox consoles, and Forza Motorsport absolutely delivers in that regard. There's a choice of graphics modes with performance targeting full 4K and 60 FPS, while performance RT blends in ray-traced reflections and ambient occlusion for a subtly more realistic image, while sacrificing resolution to retain that 60 FPS. Finally, the quality mode improves ray tracing quality further, but drops things back down to 30 FPS, which is distinctly unpleasant after racing at 60 FPS, let's admit that. Personally, and for almost all of this video, I have settled on performance mode, so that distant scenery and chain link fences at certain tracks could resolve at a higher resolution and for further distance away from me. But whatever graphics mode you choose, the newly created tracks are wonderful, whether it's the real-world Laguna Seca, Spa-Francorchamps and Watkins Glen, or a reworked original track like Maple Valley. There's a bunch of US circuits that really stand out from the video game usuals, and South Africa's Kyalami is also a great inclusion here. All of these circuits have been rendered with a lot more trackside detail and vibrancy compared to Forza Motorsport 7, and there's dynamic weather and time of day across all of the circuits, ranging from sunny days to foggy mornings and racing through thunderstorms. It is a great looking game pretty much across the board, although there is some noticeable pop-in for LODs when you're getting closer to a car, and this is much more noticeable in low light and under headlights. Obviously, Turn 10 is having to strike a balance in certain areas, and so some of the car detail maybe isn't as high-end as you might expect it to be, but in general I still feel that this is an exceptionally good looking racing game. And for the game itself, Forza Motorsport is really built upon 2 new pillars of progression that run throughout both the single-player Builders Cup career mode and the online multiplayer. One of these is having the abbreviated concept of a race weekend or race meet, and this starts off with a practice session where you get to learn the track before the roar of motorsports come to life during a race. For online races, you can set a qualifying time during that practice window, but the career sidesteps this with a challenge the grid system, where you select a starting position in return for a greater cash payout at the end. Having practice and qualifying is a major step forward for this series to capture the ebb and flow of a motorsports event and getting people to be better at the game in general. Naturally, you've got a full suite of assists if you need them, from ABS and traction control through to stability assists, racing lines and even assisted steering. But helping players to feel comfortable enough to turn these down and off is always a challenge for video games, and the only real answer to that is familiarity, which you naturally get through having to go through practice. Practice is practically mandatory, tasking you with running through 3 laps with an optional time trial target along the way, and you've also got certain sections of each track which are marked out with their own little mini time trials. You're also scored and rewarded with XP for every single corner that you take, and that's both in practice and during a race. All of this is trying to toe a very fine line of being encouraging enough to get yourself up to speed without being too demanding of what you actually do. But it's also quite an undeveloped concept when compared to the various practice session minigames that have been seen in Codemasters Formula 1 series for the past, well, it feels like almost a decade now. Thankfully, you can skip practice sessions if you really want to, though this currently requires you to first head out onto track and then select the skip option from the menu. However, I wouldn't really do that, because 3 laps doesn't take all that long, and it is a good warm-up for when the race really kicks off to understand the track and what your car is able to do. In career, you pick your starting position, with the game then projecting your finishing spot, which can tie in with how you think you're doing in the championship and the monetary reward that you expect to get at that point. Regardless of your championship result, the game never blocks you from carrying on though. You've just got to get through it, get to the end, and then you can move along. If you choose anywhere in the middle or back half of the grid, then prepare yourself for some seriously wonky AI up until you get towards the front. I stuck it on a difficulty level of 6 out of 8, and the drivatars, sometimes they just do not know how to race. Even when they're taking a decent line, they will break through corners that are meant to be flat or have a little lift, which is, yes, is very common for video games. But you'll also very often see them way off the racing line, trundling along, failing to give up on a corner that you've taken and crashing into you, and so much more. Once you manage to get through to the first 3 or 4 cars, they are not fighting so much, and the AI can be plenty fast and challenging to catch up and pass. But the main problem is that getting there, you're struggling to carve your way through AI that is not predictable enough in their stupidity. Another factor here is your car and how you're tasked with upgrading and improving it over time in what Turn 10 has nicknamed CarPG progression system. As you drive each car, and the better that you drive the tracks through practice and races, you earn car-specific experience and level it up over time. That then unlocks new car part categories, as well as the CP that you put towards them, like getting skill points in an RPG ability tree. Through a 4 to 6 race series, it's a nice metagame to gradually improve your chosen car from a basic road vehicle to a track warrior with rear wings, race tyres and engine mods. If you're having to be tentative and cautious in race 1, by the final race you're almost certainly able to really push thanks to the added mechanical grip and feel that you've built up for the car over a couple of hours of racing. There is a bit of give and take with this system though. Firstly, all of your race winnings can now go to buying cars and not go on pricey car parts. Anytime that you respec a car, it's totally free, and unlocking a category gives you all of the sports, race and other options at once, and you just have to contend with the CP limit of the car's level. A lot of that is really good as a progression system, but it also means that you can't just buy a car and then max it out all in one go, which is not so great for more social racing if a buddy has got a particular idea to recreate a specific era of British touring car championship races or something similar. The car collecting side of Forza will also be affected by which version of the game you purchase, thanks to the returning VIP membership which you only get with the premium edition of the game. This doubles the base earnings from a race, so you'll typically receive around about 30,000 credits instead of just 15,000, and that dramatically brings down the time that it takes to save up for a high-end car from around maybe 20 races to more like 10 races. It does seem a bit stingy for standard players, though you do obviously get bonuses at the end of races, and there is the finishing position of a championship which also has a financial reward. Heading Online sees Forza follow in the footsteps of other racing games with having races that are on a schedule instead of the more dynamic on-the-fly matchmaking of the past. This ties into the whole race weekend vibe, as you first have to sign up for an event which then drops you into the practice sessions, and the race then kicks off at a set time. First things first, you have to take part in 3 introductory races in the qualifier series, which lets the game award you a safety rating and a ranking for matchmaking in future. But once that is out of the way, you've got the full freedom of all the variety of the events that are available to you. Compared to GT7, you've got several different categories: touring cars, Forza GT, and then some time-limited themes and groups alongside this, running on their own set schedule and shifting through different tracks and playlists. It certainly feels like more of the underlying race simulation comes to the fore during online races, where the tyre wear and the fuel usage have much more of an impact once you're running race cars with slick tyres. A soft tyre will generally wear down and basically stop turning by the end of a shortish race, so you're best off just sticking with the medium compound unless you're up for a heartbreaking final lap. But if you pick out a medium length race in the touring car section, then you will need to pit, and that opens up some marginal strategic options that you can explore. Where Forza has generally been a gamepad first racer over the past 18 years, and this game is very fun and playable on a gamepad, the enhanced physics engine had me plugging in an Xbox capable Fanatec wheel, and I've really been enjoying it, especially with an eye to the more competitive racing scene that the online multiplayer will lead to. Through the review, I've been leaning on a few assists, such as sticking with the standard steering instead of the simulation, which does dampen some of the force feedback that you're getting, and I found it a little bit easier to intuit across a range of cars. And I've also been relying on that crutch of having a racing line through corners, because I'm a bit lazy when it comes to finding my braking points. Unfortunately, I found that wheels are still not really first-class controllers on Xbox. This was a Fanatec CSL wheelbase which has got a rev indicator strip, and the McLaren GT3 V2 wheel which has got an OLED screen built into it for a digital speedometer, but they don't work on Xbox. The console also isn't recognising and is duplicating some buttons and paddles, which limited my options when trying to find a way to map looking left and right while racing. Thankfully, another one of the assists is being able to turn on proximity indicators, and that is very useful when it comes to close racing. This is a very common issue pretty much across the board for Xbox licensed wheels, and we've had years of finger pointing and lacking communication to try and get this fixed. There's rumours and speculation that an SDK is coming along which could resolve this issue, but for now the only answer is to play on a PC to get the most out of a racing rig. As is so common, Forza Motorsport is aiming to be a long-term platform that Turn 10 will continue to grow and evolve as a live service. There's a real feeling here that the game at launch is focused on getting the basics right with the racing, career, progression and online structure. And I feel like because of that, it's lacking some of the bombast of Forza Motorsport 7 with a much more neutral feeling tone to track intros and none of the quirky driver suits. I will really miss my Viva Pinata suit, that's for certain. Still, what we can look forward to is the regular addition of new cars and tracks, as well as the featured events to show them off. Right now, I'd have to say that GT7 is probably the better racing game overall, but a big part of that is because it's had a year's head start down the live service track with 18 big updates that add content. But Forza Motorsport can certainly catch up through these monthly updates, adding new cars, tracks, features, and making plenty of other improvements along the way. Sometimes it is worth trying to reinvent the wheel, and Turn 10's renewed Forza Motorsport takes the series in some new and very worthwhile directions. The whole CarPG levelling and progression and the pre-race practice sessions really help to foster that familiarity and confidence with a car and circuit over time. And Forza is now pretty much on par with Gran Turismo, Assetto Corsa Competizione and others for the online racing structure. All of this is setting the foundations for years of new cars, tracks, races and further improvements that I'm certainly looking forward to seeing. That's all that we've got for our Forza Motorsport review. I hope that you've enjoyed what you've seen, and if you want to see a little bit more of a breakdown on things like graphic settings between Xbox Series X and Series S, for example, then keep an eye out for other videos coming in the near future. If you have enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, do all of the usual YouTube things, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye!